Deep beneath Hainan Island, China carved 450 meters into solid granite. The result? A submarine base with over 100 meters of rock overhead. Conventional strikes can't touch it. Right now it conceals up to 12 nuclear submarines. By 2035, it could hold 20. That's 1/5 of China's projected nuclear submarine force in a single, bomb-proof cavern. The price tag? $6 billion just for the tunnels. And this isn't some future concept. Satellite imagery from early 2026 shows 6 Type 094 ballistic missile submarines already operational. The Yulin Naval Base sits on Yalong Bay, Hainan Island, right next to beach resorts and luxury hotels. Tourists swim while nuclear submarines slip into the ocean through tunnels carved into the mountainside. Those tunnel entrances measure 20 meters wide. They penetrate deep enough into solid rock to park a 30-story building on its side. The engineering alone defies easy comprehension. You're talking about excavating millions of tons of granite, creating caverns large enough to service submarines carrying intercontinental ballistic missiles, all while maintaining structural integrity under the weight of an entire mountain. The surface facilities tell another story. 2 massive piers stretch 950 meters into the bay. Each one can service an aircraft carrier, or position 2 full carrier strike groups simultaneously. That's not submarine infrastructure. That's power projection capability disguised as a submarine base. Then, there are 3 smaller facilities. Official documentation calls them auxiliary piers. But their dimensions match exactly what you'd need for multiple amphibious assault ships. Dual-use infrastructure. Everything serves multiple purposes, and the construction never stops. Dredging operations run continuously, maintaining channel depths exceeding 20 meters. Pier reinforcements continued through 2023, 2024, and into 2025. Satellite tracking shows material deliveries every 6 to 8 weeks. This isn't maintenance, it's expansion. The location itself reveals strategic thinking. Yalong Bay offers natural deep-water access. The surrounding terrain provides perfect cover for tunnel construction. And the civilian resort development? Perfect camouflage. Who suspects a nuclear submarine base next to a Club Med? But here's what makes this facility genuinely dangerous. Those tunnels don't just hide submarines. Yes, they enable operations that would be impossible at conventional bases. Geography determines naval power, and Hainan Island's position is nearly perfect. The base sits at the southern gateway to the South China Sea. Submarines exiting those tunnels enter contested waters within minutes. Not hours, minutes. There's no long, vulnerable transit through shallow coastal zones. No bottlenecks where adversaries can position detection arrays. 50 nautical miles south, the continental shelf drops away. The 200-meter isobath marks where shallow water ends and deep ocean begins. At conventional bases, submarines must transit shallow zones where they're exposed, detectable, vulnerable. Hainan eliminates that problem entirely. A submarine leaving Yulin reaches operational depth while still inside China's defensive umbrella. The air defense systems blanket the area. Anti-ship missile batteries cover every approach vector. Surface naval formations patrol in coordinated patterns. Any hostile force trying to establish surveillance near those tunnel exits would face immediate, overwhelming response. This creates something unprecedented, a sanctuary where submarines can deploy and return without ever surfacing in detectable zones. Traditional submarine bases have choke points. Hainan doesn't. The Paracel Islands sit 200 nautical miles southeast. Submarines can reach them completely submerged, undetected, fully armed. They can establish positions near disputed territories without any surface Navy involvement. No destroyers announcing their presence, no aircraft providing cover, just submarines, arriving silently in waters China claims but doesn't fully control. And the transit routes work both ways. Submarines returning from South China Sea patrols can approach Hainan from multiple vectors, slip into those tunnels, and disappear. tracking becomes nearly impossible. But the submarine fleet using this base represents something far more concerning than geography alone suggests. Satellite imagery from early 2026 confirmed what defense analysts had suspected for years. 6 Type 094 nuclear ballistic missile submarines were positively identified at Yulin. Not visiting, operational, based there permanently. And those are just the ones visible when the satellites passed overhead. Intelligence assessments now conclude the 7th and 8th Type 094 submarines launched during the 2024 to 2025 timeframe. Production didn't slow down. It accelerated. These boats don't appear in every satellite pass because they're doing exactly what they're designed to do: patrolling, hiding, maintaining China's sea-based nuclear deterrent. Conservative estimates place 8 to 12 nuclear submarines at Yulin currently. That's the floor, not the ceiling. The infrastructure supports 20. And here's where the numbers get really interesting. China's submarine production tempo now exceeds American submarine construction rates as of 2026. Read that again. The United States, with decades of nuclear submarine experience, with the most advanced shipbuilding facilities on the planet, is being outpaced. China is building these boats faster than America can replace its aging fleet. The Type 094 submarines represent the current generation. Each one carries 12 JL-2 submarine-launched ballistic missiles. Each missile can strike targets over 7,000 kilometers away. Do the math. A single submarine positioned in the Philippine Sea can hold the entire western United States at risk. But the Type 094 isn't the end of the story. It's the middle chapter. Larger submarine classes are anticipated to enter service later in the 2020s. The Type 096 next-generation ballistic missile submarine is already under construction, bigger, quieter, carrying more missiles with longer range. And every one of those boats will need a home port with the facilities to maintain them, arm them, and send them back out into the deep ocean. Yulin was built for exactly this moment. But numbers alone don't win undersea warfare. Shanghai Jiao Tong University published research in 2024 that sent ripples through naval intelligence communities worldwide. They developed vibration damping technology that reduces engine noise transmitted through the hull by 26 decibels. 26 decibels doesn't sound like much until you understand how sound works underwater. A 10 decibel reduction translates to roughly a 32% decrease in detectable range. That's the physics. But 26 decibels? That's not linear improvement. That's exponential. A submarine that could be detected at 100 kilometers might now only be detectable at 30, maybe less. This technology directly addresses the primary method submarines are detected: passive sonar. Listening. Every submarine makes noise. Engines vibrate. And propellers create cavitation bubbles that collapse with distinctive sounds. Machinery hums. Pumps cycle. And sensitive hydrophones can hear all of it from remarkable distances. Could hear it. The vibration damping breakthrough changes the equation fundamentally. It attacks the problem at the source, preventing engine vibrations from transmitting through the hull structure into the water. The submarine doesn't get quieter. It gets nearly silent. And here's the detail that matters most. This research wasn't conducted at a classified military facility. It happened at a civilian university. Under China's military-civil fusion framework, civilian institutions advance military capabilities. The line between academic research and weapons development has been deliberately erased. Breakthroughs happen faster. Technology transfers immediately. Application to the submarine fleet isn't theoretical. It's happening now. Type 094 submarines are being retrofitted. Next-generation boats are being built with this technology integrated from the keel up. Chinese submarines operating in deep water have become significantly harder to track. American attack submarines that previously could detect and shadow Chinese ballistic missile submarines now face a different problem: finding them in the first place. The Pacific Ocean covers 63 million square miles. A silent submarine in that much water becomes effectively invisible. But making submarines quieter only solves half the problem. China needed to see what everyone else was doing underwater. China calls it the Underwater Great Wall. Western analysts prefer Blue Ocean Information Network, different names for the same thing. An interconnected sensor array that turns China's coastal waters into a monitored zone where nothing moves undetected. The system consists of 3 integrated layers: seabed sensors anchored to the ocean floor, autonomous platforms that drift with currents or patrol predetermined routes, and data fusion systems that process everything in real time. These components are deployed across strategic choke points and throughout China's littoral zones. Coverage extends across the South China Sea, the Yellow Sea, and the Bohai Sea region. Complete awareness in China's near seas. Every submarine transit, every surface ship movement, every underwater drone, all of it tracked, categorized, and analyzed. The objective isn't just surveillance. It's achieving comprehensive maritime domain awareness while simultaneously denying that same capability to adversaries. China knows what's happening in these waters, and they know that you know they know. That changes behavior. American submarines that once operated freely in these areas now face detection risk that didn't exist a decade ago. But raw data means nothing without integration. The sensor network feeds directly to submarine command centers. A Chinese submarine commander preparing to leave Yulin receives real-time information about every potential threat in the surrounding waters. Surface ships, enemy submarines, optimal exit routes. The same data flows to surface fleet coordination networks. This creates a defensive bubble around strategic assets. Its Chinese ballistic missile submarines don't just slip out of Yulin and hope they're not detected. They leave with complete situational awareness. They know where the threats are, they know the gaps in coverage, they know the safe corridors, and that sensor network is expanding outward every year, pushing the detection perimeter farther from China's coast. But underwater sensors and silent submarines still need something else to make the strategy complete. Here's where things get really clever. The Yulin Naval Base sits right next to the Yalong Bay National Resort District. We're talking about one of China's premier tourist destinations. 5-star hotels, white sand beaches, crystal clear water. Thousands of tourists every single year. And just around the headland, nuclear submarines disappearing into a mountain. This isn't accidental. And it's strategic genius. Because how do you justify a military strike on a facility that's integrated with civilian infrastructure? How do you explain to the international community why you targeted an area filled with resorts and commercial shipping? The entire base complex is designed with what China calls military-civil fusion. On paper, many of the piers and facilities are technically capable of civilian maritime use. Research vessels, oceanographic surveys, commercial submarine cable maintenance, all perfectly legitimate activities. Except they're also advancing military objectives. Civilian researchers mapping the sea floor are gathering data that optimizes submarine routes. Academic institutions studying underwater acoustics are improving sonar evasion techniques. Commercial ventures are providing cover for military operations. This creates what intelligence analysts call a deniability layer. When questioned about activities at Yulin, Chinese officials can point to civilian functions. They can frame the entire complex as defensive infrastructure, just protecting our territorial waters, just conducting scientific research, just developing our maritime economy. And that ambiguity is the point, because it makes any adversary action exponentially more complicated. A preemptive strike isn't just a military decision anymore. It's a political nightmare. It's a legal minefield. It's a propaganda gift. You can't target a facility without hitting civilian infrastructure. You can't destroy military capabilities without international condemnation. You can't act without looking like the aggressor. The dual-use strategy turns the base itself into a deterrent. Yeah, but the protection goes even deeper than political cover. Let's talk about what survivability actually means in nuclear terms. Those tunnels we discussed earlier, they're carved through more than 100 meters of solid granite. That's not just impressive engineering. That's protection against virtually every conventional weapon in existence. Bunker buster bombs? Ineffective. Tactical nuclear weapons? The submarines inside would likely survive. Even a direct nuclear strike would struggle to penetrate that much rock. What this means operationally is profound. In any conflict scenario, China's submarine fleet inside Yulin remains protected during the initial exchange. While surface vessels are vulnerable, while airfields are targeted, while command centers are struck, those submarines sit untouched beneath a mountain. Yes, that's called second strike capability. The ability to absorb an enemy's first attack and still retaliate with devastating force. And here's where the deep water access becomes critical again. Those submarines don't need to surface. They don't need to transit through monitored shallow waters. They can launch from protected positions with direct access to operational depth. The Type 094 submarines stationed at Yulin carry JL-2 submarine-launched ballistic missiles. Each missile has a range of approximately 7,000 kilometers. From patrol areas in the South China Sea, that's sufficient to reach the continental United States. Think about what that means for deterrence calculations. China now has a credible, survivable nuclear retaliatory capability in the Indo-Pacific. You can't eliminate it with a first strike, yet you can't blockade it. You can't neutralize it without unacceptable risk. This fundamentally alters the strategic balance. Nuclear deterrence isn't just about having weapons. It's about ensuring those weapons survive long enough to be used. Yulin provides that assurance. The base transforms China's nuclear posture from vulnerable to resilient. And that changes everything about how conflicts are calculated, how risks are assessed, how adversaries make decisions. But survivability and capability are only part of the equation. The real question is how this compares to what other naval powers have built. Let's put this in perspective. As of 2026, China's submarine production tempo actually exceeds American rates. They're building more submarines faster than the United States. That's not speculation. Yet that's documented industrial capacity. The quantitative advantage is growing every year. But it's not just about numbers. It's about infrastructure that supports those numbers. The United States has impressive submarine facilities: Kings Bay, Georgia; Bangor, Washington; advanced maintenance capabilities; sophisticated support infrastructure. But here's what America doesn't have: hardened submarine bases with direct deep water access in contested regions. U.S. submarines operating in the Western Pacific deploy from bases thousands of miles away. They transit through monitored choke points. They operate far from protected facilities. There's no American equivalent to a mountain-protected base with immediate access to 4,000-meter depths. For decades, American undersea dominance was simply assumed. Yet the United States had quieter submarines, better technology, superior training, unmatched operational experience. Those assumptions came from the Cold War, from decades of tracking Soviet submarines, from technological advantages that seemed permanent. Those assumptions are now being fundamentally challenged, not because American submarines have gotten worse, but because the gap has closed dramatically, and because China has built infrastructure that changes the operational environment. There's also no comparable American investment in integrated undersea sensor networks across the Indo-Pacific theater. The United States has sensors. It has monitoring capabilities. But nothing approaching the scale and integration of what China has deployed in its near seas. Perhaps most remarkable is the timeline. Yet China has compressed what should have been decades of technological development and infrastructure construction into an accelerated program that's reshaped the underwater domain in less than 20 years. That acceleration reveals something about strategic priority, about resource allocation, about long-term planning that doesn't shift with election cycles. But even the most sophisticated base and the most capable submarines still need one more element to be truly effective. They need to control the geography around them, and that's exactly what Yulin gives them. Control over the most strategically important waterway in the world. Every year, over $3 trillion in trade flows through the South China Sea. That's not a typo. $3.4 trillion in cargo ships, oil tankers, and container vessels passing through waters that are now blanketed by Chinese sensor networks. Submarines operating from Yulin can monitor every single vessel. They can track, they can shadow, and if necessary, they can interdict. The Malacca Strait sits just 1,200 miles to the southwest. 80% of China's oil imports pass through that narrow channel. But here's the thing. The same submarines that can protect Chinese shipping can also threaten everyone else's. Then there's the territorial dimension. The Paracel Islands, the Spratly Islands. Disputed territories that have caused diplomatic incidents for decades. Underwater infrastructure doesn't just support military operations. It reinforces territorial claims with permanent military presence. And Taiwan. The scenario that keeps military planners awake at night. These submarines from Yulin can reach potential blockade positions around Taiwan in under 12 hours. They can establish interdiction zones. They can cut off resupply routes. They can operate in waters too shallow for American nuclear submarines to safely navigate. This is what military strategists call the first island chain, the line running from Japan through Taiwan to the Philippines. For decades, it's been a natural barrier containing Chinese naval power. But submarines operating from Yulin can slip through that chain. They can operate in the Philippine Sea, in the Western Pacific, in waters the U.S. Navy has considered its domain since World War II. Geography isn't just about location, it's about leverage. But controlling choke points is only part of the strategy because Yulin doesn't operate alone. It's one component in a layered defensive system that's designed